So today we are diving deep into the Italian Renaissance. And we all think of it as this incredible time for art, which it was. But this story isn't just about masterpieces. It's really about how the immense wealth that paid for all that art also kicked off this global race for spices, a race that led to the discovery of a new world and completely redrew the map of power as we know it. And that brings us to the central puzzle of the whole era. I mean, the Italy of the 14th and 15th centuries, it wasn't a country. Not at all. It was this chaotic mess of rival city-states, often run by pretty ruthless guys. And they were always fighting. So how on earth did this crazy, unstable environment produce some of the most beautiful and influential art in all of human history? Just look at the Florence Cathedral. I mean, that dome is breathtaking. It's the perfect symbol of this paradox, right? A mind-blowing leap forward in architecture and engineering, soaring above a city that was famous for its political drama. To figure out how this was even possible, you have to do one thing: follow the money. All right, so let's start with the money. While countries like England and France were just burning through their cash fighting the Hundred Years' War, Italy's cities were getting seriously rich. See, they were in the perfect spot to be the middlemen for all of Europe, and that trade boom laid the foundation for absolutely everything that came next. So this new birth, the Renaissance, was this deliberate look back to the glory days of ancient Greece and Rome. But here's the thing, it wasn't just some intellectual movement. It was supercharged by a ton of cash. The money just pouring into these cities from trade gave them the fuel they needed for this incredible cultural explosion. And the way these cities were run was all over the map. You had Venice, which was basically a republic run by a small group of super rich merchant families. Then you had places like Milan, which were often run by a single, powerful strongman, a despot who'd grabbed power and had to be pretty cunning to keep it. But both systems ended up pouring money into the art. Let's really zero in on the economic engine of the time, Venice. I mean, the whole city is built on islands in a lagoon. It was basically born from the sea. This crazy geography made it a natural fortress and the perfect hub for trade, connecting a hungry Europe with all the exotic goods from the East. And the scale of Venice's power, it was just staggering. Around the year 1400, it was an absolute superpower. A population of 200,000 was huge for the time. It had this massive merchant fleet, a powerful navy, and thousands of marines to back it all up. Venice was, no joke, a global force. So what do you do when you have that much money? Well, for the wealthy merchants, the powerful despots, and the ambitious popes of Renaissance Italy, the answer was obvious. You pay for art. Becoming a patron was how you showed off your wealth, your faith, and your power. It was how you turned business profits into timeless cultural masterpieces. And no city shows this better than Florence. It was a chaotic republic, for sure, but it was also the financial capital of Europe, kind of run behind the scenes by powerful banking families like the Medici. And under patrons like Lorenzo the Magnificent, Florence became the undisputed capital of 15th century art. The palaces in Florence are the perfect metaphor for the whole era. On the outside, they look like fortresses, right? Heavy stone, barred windows. But inside, they were these havens of luxury, just filled with the most beautiful art you can imagine. It's the perfect picture of the Renaissance, incredible creativity blooming right in the middle of constant danger. And this whole system of patronage created this kind of artistic arms race. The civic pride of Florence, symbolized by its incredible Duomo, was soon being challenged by the popes down in Rome. They started this massive project to just tear down the old St. Peter's and build a new one that would be the biggest church in the world, a huge statement of their own power and glory. So what happens when you have all this competition and all this money floating around? Well, it directly fueled the careers of some of the greatest artistic geniuses in history. Wealthy patrons were always on the lookout for the absolute best talent, and boy, did they find it. At the very peak of the Renaissance, you've got three names that just stand above everyone else. You've got Leonardo da Vinci, the ultimate Renaissance man who was a genius at pretty much everything. You have Michelangelo, the sculptor and painter with almost superhuman talent, and Raphael, whose work is just the definition of beautiful harmony. These guys basically set the standard for Western art for the next few hundred years. The level of dedication here was just unreal. Take these bronze doors from the Florence Baptistery. The artist, Lorenzo Ghiberti, spent 27 years of his life making them. Think about that for a second. 27 years. It just shows you the incredible skill and patience that went into these projects. You know you've done something right when Michelangelo himself sees your work and says it's good enough to be the gates of paradise. But here's the big twist. The very same trade that was funding all this incredible beauty, it also held the seeds of a massive, world-changing shift. To get what happens next, we have to look closer at where all that money came from. The massive fortunes of cities like Venice were built on a near total monopoly. They controlled the land routes that brought one of the world's most valuable things to Europe, spices from the East. It's honestly hard for us to imagine today, but spices were basically like gold. In a world with no refrigerators, they were crucial for keeping meat from going bad and for making food that was maybe a little past its prime actually edible. Plus, having spices was a huge status symbol. And because Venice controlled the supply, they could charge insane prices, which made every other country desperate to find a new way to get them. And that desperation kicked off this very systematic, decades-long mission by Portugal. They just methodically pushed down the coast of Africa, shattering old myths about what the world was like. And then finally, in 1498, Vasco da Gama sailed all the way around the tip of Africa and reached India. With that one voyage, he broke the Venetian monopoly. The game had completely changed. But the Portuguese weren't the only ones with a big idea. While they were trying to go the long way around, a sailor from Genoa had a different, way more radical thought. What if you just sailed straight across the ocean? Okay, so check this out. This globe from 1492 shows us the world as Christopher Columbus saw it. And you can see right away what's missing, right? There are no Americas. They thought Asia was much bigger, and Japan, or Cipango they called it, is right where Mexico should be. They thought the world was a lot smaller than it really is. So in 1492, with backing from Spain, Columbus sailed west. He was absolutely convinced he was going to hit Japan in a few weeks. When he finally made landfall, he was certain he was in the East Indies. And he actually died believing he had just found a new route to Asia, never realizing he had stumbled upon two entire continents that Europeans never even knew existed. And here's the bottom line. These two breakthroughs, the Portuguese route around Africa and the Spanish discovery of the Americas, they completely flipped the global economy on its head. The center of wealth and power shifted like overnight from the Mediterranean Sea to the Atlantic Ocean. The very economic engine that made the Italian Renaissance possible was suddenly obsolete. The Renaissance was born in this really unique moment when new money and rediscovered ideas just collided. And it kind of leaves us with a question for our own time. As the way we trade and share information gets completely revolutionized today, what kind of rebirth are we on the edge of?